And yeah, that pretty much all stopped around the summer of 2000, right? And then so yeah, we entered a pretty tough market from about 2001 to 2004. So I tried to go to the PhD program at CMU. That wasn't really a great fit either, so I dropped out and moved to California. So I've been out here since 2004. Um, Worked at a bunch of startups. I came out for PayPal. I worked at another Stanford startup called Coverity. Um, Interesting work. Nothing was like sort of life-changing in terms of the outcomes. The big one was when I went to work at a startup called WhatsApp, which I was not planning to join when I first met them, but they went over the metrics of the business, and I was like, oh, this is actually a viable business, right? So I was just like, at the time, I was like, they're just going to build another version of like AOL Instant Messenger, another version of Yahoo Messenger, and I just didn't think it was going to have staying power, be like valuable. But they said, look, this is just like SMS, and we're our users are willing to pay us $1, and that covers our costs. And like this business is basically functioning, barely profitable from day one. Um, and so I joined as like I was one of the first 10 employees. There was a little bit of a bait and switch because when I was talking to the founders about joining, they said, "Oh, we need an Android developer." And then when I showed up on day one, they're like, "Oh, we hired an Android developer. We need you to work on BlackBerry instead." And so I ended up doing the BlackBerry client at WhatsApp from 2010 to 2014. Um, so it was not even then it was clear it wasn't going to be a winning platform, but it was really critical in like the growth of the business because users on BlackBerry are familiar with the platform. BlackBerry had its own chat platform similar to Apple's iMessage today. Back then, it was called BlackBerry Messenger (BBM), and so those users used BBM similar to the way we use WhatsApp today, which is it's a side channel outside of SMS. And so they were already familiar with what WhatsApp was. They're like, oh yeah, it's just like BBM, but it works with the other phones. And so they were really critical to getting the early growth of the network because we got the BlackBerry users much easier, and then they educated the iPhone users who were less familiar. Because remember, iMessage didn't come out until 2012, so WhatsApp had a 2-year lead on iMessage
Mm.
and really leveraged that. So
And then you
that's the
finished WhatsApp.
WhatsApp. Yeah. So I stayed there. So I was there for 4 years on working on BlackBerry. Then the acquisition was announced in 2014, and there was a 4-year earnout attached to that. So most of us stuck around for 4 years. I left in like early 2019. Yeah, so I left in early 2019, which was a little over 4 years after the acquisition happened. Tried my own startup after that called Hello App. It was me and another WhatsApp guy. We were trying to build a social platform with WhatsApp principles. So it's like phone first, encrypted, user privacy. Like our user profiles were going to be like just a phone number and nothing else, right? So that was the whole idea. So we built it and it worked, but we couldn't get growth going. So we shut that down in 2024. And then since then, I've been looking at supporting Carnegie Mellon more in the entrepreneurship space. And so I've been putting together a venture fund that will be focusing on investing in Carnegie Mellon startups across the country. So not just in Pittsburgh. So we're looking at alumni in the Bay Area, alumni in New York, or anywhere else. We're just trying to build a better network of entrepreneurship focused alumni so that we can support each other. So that's pretty much today. So like I think that's the end
So,
of my
so then, hang on.
bio.
Then today you woke up and now you're here and you're talking to our
Yeah.
clients.
Yeah.
Okay, good. We covered the whole timeline. So, start noodling on the questions you have now. Please make a note of them, jot them on your phone, right? I have a couple we're going to prompt along the way, but just to maybe point, it'd be great if you could sort of jump in, right? If you have a question that really responds to what Michael said, we can always kind of take your question as a priority. We don't need to wait for me to do it. Some of you are kind enough to kind of give me a little bit of a nudge about what you are going to want to know, but maybe just because it's really relevant to the exercise we just talked about, Michael. I mean, I hear the reason you sort of were familiar with the space, kind of going from WhatsApp to your startup. But could you walk us through a little bit of the journey about like what you had to think about in terms of why do a startup, why not stay at WhatsApp, why
Hmm.
not go sleep in the woods for 5 years and become a Zen Buddhist?
I mean, if that's your thing, you could do that, but it's not mine. So like that. Yeah, I mean, in terms of why leave WhatsApp, and I was after 4 years, the original founders had left, and so it was. I mean, this is a pretty common story after an acquisition. Usually, it's after about 2 years, right? You'll see the people are like, "Oh, I don't really like this new organization," right? So it was a similar process. It's just we had a 4-year earnout, so people stuck around a little longer. To be honest, I think Facebook probably regretted making the earnout so long because they had a bunch of employees who didn't really like their policies sticking around, like operating WhatsApp. So, but yeah, pretty much everyone's gone from that time period now. what happens is like, so the founders come in, they're used to being the founders of WhatsApp. Now they're reporting into Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg is now your boss, right? So he gets to tell you what to do when you didn't have a boss before. And so after a couple of years of that, you disagree with them, and then you get frustrated, and then you leave. Um, I mean, in the case of Brian and Jan, they had, I think Jan had at the time $10 billion, and Brian had like 3 billion. So like, I don't think they're going to try and start something new. I mean, Elon Musk does that kind of stuff. I don't. Most people just, they get to many billions of dollars. It's like, well, what am I going to do? Like outperform my last startup, right? So once they left, I was moved in. Now I had to report into new management that came from Facebook, and it was the same issue. I just didn't enjoy working with them, and so I was like, it's probably time to go. So that's why I left. Um, yeah, in
And then
terms of why would you? Yeah,
yeah, I think you're gonna hit the head right on it. So I say like so,
yeah,
but you have all these skills, right? I mean, at the time, like messaging was ubiquitous, right? The idea of it, at least,
yep,
social networks were burgeoning. Privacy was very underinvested in, right? And so I very much honor and love your idea. As a former BlackBerry user, I can appreciate this, but I would
yeah.
still love today to have only my number be the associated condition. But why that? Why not start like an Airbnb like rental? Why not start a restaurant? Why not start, a bus company? Like, why that?
Oh, well, it's just because we had we had a background in building mobile apps. So it was like me and it was a business guy from WhatsApp, so he wasn't an engineer. So I ended up putting together the engineering team. But it's just we had the background, right? We knew how to like build the infrastructure. We could credibly say this is going to look similar to WhatsApp, right, in terms of technology stack. So like we built it, all the backend was very similar to WhatsApp. Um, and so that's, we were able to scale it up that way. I mean, when we launched, we had 200,000 users, and our system handled that just fine, despite not really having a good test of that ahead of time. So we felt pretty good about that. Um, but yeah, it's staying in your lane. I mean, so since I know mobile and social media to some extent, like that's why we decided to push on that one, which I think is generally good advice for anyone starting a new company, right? It's like what gives you credibility in that space, right? So what is it like? What is your background? What is your unfair advantage in that space? Like, who do you know? What can you get done that someone else could not get done? Right? So,
Yeah, we talked a little bit about like big drivers that kind of keep you focused. One was having kind of very specialized, kind of deep experience, if not lived experience in a problem. So I think that echoes really well. I would love to kind of just take a breath though and see if people are already sparking with some ideas or they have a question for Michael. I have a few more kind of prompts that people already submitted, but this is a good opportunity to sort of zero in and say, hey, why did you do that? Were you your own first investor? Why don't you live in Pittsburgh anymore? That one I'm throwing some shade at you. What do you think? So, one of the things we're going to have to work on is when people are kind enough to kind of zoom in on us, right? Like actually taking in the moment. Like, I don't know if you know a lot of like the first 10 employees at WhatsApp, but this is one of them. So it's 10% of the entire founding enterprise. I think everyone here knows WhatsApp. So I think this is a good networking opportunity. All right. Who's got the best question? Right here. Go ahead, Paul. Yeah, you might actually, if you don't mind, can you can actually, yeah, come up here just from the microphone point of view, though, I think, Paul. I think that's mostly what I want to make sure Michael can hear your question directly.
How's it going, Michael? I'm Paul,
hello, hey,
Fremont senior environmental engineering major, CEO and co-founder of Thursday Thrift. We're a AI resale discovery platform for secondhand clothing. I know that being in the startup world, especially when you're working with like 10 employees, a big thing is maintaining momentum. So how did you guys and the team at WhatsApp really work on, maintaining momentum and getting those traction and those numbers for those investors and going about communicating that effectively?
I mean, WhatsApp had an unusual story from that perspective in that it had really unusually good product market fit almost from day one, right? So we were growing, and it was, it's the dream of every founder, and this is very atypical. So I don't think you should take this as a lesson to apply to your startups,
Yeah.
to everyone. That's, which is, it's called product-led growth. So say PLG is the common shorthand for that, which is your product is going to inherently cause more people to come in, and it'll grow on its own, which means you don't have to do marketing, you don't have to do the go-to-market, and so on. It's extremely rare, right? So like it worked for like that's why I'm saying like you should not use this as a lesson. Like, oh, I'm gonna go only build product-led growth, startups, because it's just very hard to make that work. And I think it's a common mistake to think like, oh, I'll just build this great product, and then suddenly the whole world will show up at my door and want to buy it from me, right? Like that doesn't work that way at all. Um, but in terms of WhatsApp, because I had such great internal product-led growth, like
Mhm.
you know, I mean, there weren't even any external investors when I first joined. It was just the founders and like their friends and family had invested some money. I mean, they're external, but they're not like, institutional investors. Um, and the product was growing by like 1% a week, the user base. Like we were getting new users and they were all sticking and it just kept growing on its own. So that part, I mean, psychologically, when you're at a company that's growing and successful, like that's pretty easy to keep people motivated. But the flip side of it, I mean, because it was such a leading product, people will say this, but it really was true. Like people are like, oh, do you think about the competing? Like, do you think about BBM? Do you think about iMessage? And really, it was very rare to talk about that. And it's not like it never came up, but it wasn't like we spent every week like looking at the competition and like trying to decide exactly how to be like them. So we were just kind of doing our own thing for a long time. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a great answer. I mean, it definitely makes sense with product-led growth. And then one question out of curiosity, with the speed of other big AI tycoons like ChatGPT and Claude, um,
yeah.
what do you think is the biggest defensibility for, smaller startups as, these new features come out every day, kind of wiping out these new ideas and problem solutions and kind of the differentiators that really, give these companies the defensibility they need?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, AI has been an interesting technology cycle in that it doesn't seem like people really have, strong moats compared to previous cycles,
Mhm.
right? Like when people built a mobile user base, okay, like that would be kind of become your moat. Um, Whereas these AI ones, it's like, okay, like you can make something that helps legal professionals, but there's probably 10 other companies doing the same thing. Your customers can switch over fairly easily. And it ends up basically the old moats are the ones just getting reinforced more. So it's just the people who had built moats in the previous tech cycles, like Facebook and Google, like we see those
Right.
companies getting huge benefits from this, which I know it doesn't quite give you the answer you're looking for. I mean, you got to figure out like it's really you want to move away from. I mean, the secret I think to getting good investment is to move away from competitive markets, right? So you want to find a space where there aren't really any material competitors,
Right. For
right?
sure.
And then you get, yeah, yeah.
For sure.
So if you're going to a place where there's 10 other competitors, it's just going to make your entire fundraising journey challenging, right? Because if one of your competitors gets Sequoia, that means Sequoia is no longer investing in you, right? So like now you've got to go to the remaining ones. And so then Andreessen picks one of your other competitors. And okay, now you've lost two of them. So it makes it harder and harder. So you really want to, position yourself in a category that's unique so that there's no other competitors.
100%. Thank you, Michael.
All right, Oren,
Yeah.
slide in. And why don't you come up and queue after if you don't mind? That way you can kind of rotate them in. All right, say hello, introduce yourself, of
Hi.
course.
My name is
Hello.
Oren, and I'm Master of Arts Management here at CMU. So a little bit special, let's say, in this context. I'm interested in the growth period. I'm assuming that you were like right before or in the middle of the growth of WhatsApp during these years. And I'm interested in the first, like technologically, if it was like overwhelming or it was like on pace, that how do you feel about that? If there is a feature that you feel like it was the game changer in terms of like catching more users. And
Mhm.
the last question is about
Let's pause that one. Let's take the first two and then you'll get the next one.
oh sorry. I feel
Okay.
like it's the same thing, but yeah, sorry.
Sure. So yeah, yes, I was at WhatsApp during the growth period. When I joined, there were about 2 million users on the platform already. And I stayed 9 years. Then when I left 9 years later, they were just shy of 2 billion, right? So about a thousandfold growth while I was working there. In the time from when I joined to the WhatsApp acquisition or the Facebook acquisition, I think we were at about 300 million. So we went from about 2 million to 300 million around the time of the acquisition of Facebook. So yes, I saw most of the growth there. A lot of the features that, I mean, some of the features that the founders talked about were already there when I joined. So I can tell that narrative, but it's not a firsthand narrative. I've heard this from other people before me at WhatsApp. Um, so yeah, the story is WhatsApp started out, and it's funny, it's still in the app today. So I'm sure most of you have WhatsApp on your phone, even if you don't use it every day. There's a feature called Status, which used to be called About. And so if you can go in there, it'll have like, I don't know, a dozen pre-filled options like my battery's about to run out, or like, I'm at the movies or I'm at the gym. It's supposed to be an indication of why you might not answer your phone. This was the original product of WhatsApp. That's it. It was just like you could put up a status and share that with your friends, and then they would know like why you're not able to answer the phone. But the reason I bring it up, it's like the set of 12 statuses that are in there today are the same ones Jan came up with on day one of the company. So back when he formed it in 2009, those were the 12 statuses, and they haven't changed. And so now they're on like billions of phones. But in terms of the features that led to the growth, which I think was your question, so it started with status. realized that people were using that to message each other. They were like, because you'd update your status, it would send a push notification to your friends' phones. Saw people like updating their statuses in pairs to like chat with each other. And it's like, okay, let's just build a chat function, right? So the chat function worked pretty well. When it really took off was when they added media sharing. So it was, and at this point there was no group chats, right? So it's all just one-on-one, like you're just, chatting directly with one other person. And so initially people liked it because they saved money on texting. And the big one was just because if you recall, or maybe you don't recall, but back then the SMS plans, especially in Europe, where you had to pay per message you sent, and you had to pay like something like 10 times more for a media message, which is if you want to send just a small little image or like a incredibly short video, like 2 seconds, you'd have to pay. So it'd be like 10 cents for a text message and $1 for like a media message. So once we added the media support to WhatsApp, that's when people really said, okay, now I can send photos to my friends. I don't have to pay $1 per photo, right? And so that really, really spiked the growth.
And my last question is about the how it's spread like from the US, because I feel like it's more internationally used
Mhm.
than what's happening in the US. I mean, I was surprised to see that
Yeah.
WhatsApp promoting WhatsApp in US
Yes.
context.
The US was never a strong market for WhatsApp. Like, I don't think we really, our initial users, I mean, Jan, to be honest, like the sort of, if you want to go back to the seeding point of where WhatsApp started growing from, it's still available now, I believe. So there's this web platform called Flyer Talk, which people may have heard of. It's for people who are frequent flyers discussing like how to navigate their airlines and all these like travel tips.
Hey, no
And
hate,
so there's a
I'm on Flyer Talk, VIP over
okay. There is still a post, you can find it. It'll say Jan Koum. It's like, hey, I just created this little chat app. Like, thought you guys might like it when you're traveling internationally. And that was the sole promotion he did for WhatsApp early on, but it hooked enough users and it started growing from there. I bring it up because you can go search for it. I don't have the link handy, but if you go search for it, you'll find it. And you'll see people.
Great.
Um,
Thank you.
Let's rotate it around. Thank you, Michael. I'd love to see some variety in the people that are asking questions here, unless we're all gonna submit.
Hello.
Yep, go ahead. You go ahead and do it. I'm gonna sort of look at everybody in the eye and say we should use some diversity in our thinking, some diversity in our backgrounds. It'd be wonderful to get other points of view up here. Any question? Who wants to queue up next? Think about it.
Oh, I know you want to come up.
All right.
Hey, Mike, how's it going? Thank you
Hello.
very much for taking your time to be with us today. My name is Matt. I'm 36. I am the CEO. Let me go back. I am a second-year MBA student. My undergrad was in computer engineering. I spent 6 years in software development, 6 years in the military. Now I'm at CMU. I'm the CEO and founder of my startup. And I know you've been in whoever are the CEOs and founders here, I know you've been in our shoes before. So I had a couple questions. So first of all, I'm a Bay Area native. I'm from Orinda, so I know you're probably out there
Oh, yeah.
somewhere. What area are you in? I'm guessing Palo Alto.
I'm in San Francisco right now. Normally I'm in South Bay, but yeah, I'm in San
Oh,
Francisco
nice.
today.
Yeah, no,
So,
I
yeah.
worked in the city for many years. So being an incorporated startup at this point, our product is about 80 to 90% complete with the functionality and the development. Now we're getting all the legal IP protection. I'm getting the liability. I'm working with that domain as well. I'm kind of curious because I know you've probably been in my shoes before. What is your approach to understanding, to operating all these fun domains? Which one was your favorite to work on? Which one needed more outside assistance? And then for me going forward, it's going to be getting in touch with the right people if I want to get funding for my product. And
Let's start with the fun.
Yeah.
We're gonna go do media training live. So
Yeah.
Matt,
Sure.
Mike, just refuse any other question except for the first for now.
Yeah.
Let's restate the first one in simple terms while
Okay.
Michael's kind of getting the beers going. What's the first?
What was the first question? It was.
I think it felt like a little bit around domain focus.
Oh yeah, so
Right.
I'm a very much a tech guy. I don't look like a tech guy, but I love software development, and that's been the most fun so far is coding it pretty much on my own. I have a couple advisors helping me with testing and all that type of stuff, but there's legal, there's advertising, there's working with employment. I guess that's legal, but there's so many different domains. What was your approach to dealing with all those? What was your favorite and what was your least favorite?
So I heard like HR, finance, intellectual property,
Yeah.
like the odds and ends, and any kind of stuff that you're drawing in terms of stuff that was like the biggest thing you needed to learn or focus on for a fellow nerd in training.
I'm just thinking that through. I mean, I was mostly on the engineering side, so I didn't often. I mean, until I had my own startup, which wasn't that successful. So I'm not sure you want to draw a lot of like lessons from that one. I was mostly on the engineering side, so I was like, I just I did mandatory trainings that HR had to do at various startups, but I wasn't really focused on verticals outside of engineering. Um, I thought your question was more about like how did I end up like working in the specific domain of engineering that was appropriate at WhatsApp,
Just
or
so
was it?
like, let me restructure it. So like, I know you like myself, you're in engineering and more the tech side, but I'm sure when you're
Yeah.
even at WhatsApp, you had your hand in a lot of the operation or the day to day or the, working
Mm.
with legal teams or working with any other types of teams. I'm just stuck in legal because that's what I've been dealing with lately, and I want to jump off a cliff. But what was I going to say?
Yeah,
But I'm sure when you did your own startups, you had to do all that as well. So
yeah. I think the biggest lesson learned was watching because I remember working at bigger companies. Because I worked at PayPal, I worked at another startup that was very like process bound. And we tended to like just you would ask lawyers for permission to do like, hey, like, can we do this? And like they'd be like, no, like here's all the reasons you shouldn't do it. And it was when I was at WhatsApp, I would watch the founders, and I only got to watch this from afar, but like, the lawyers would say no, and then they would just like, well, how do we actually make it happen, right? So like, and so they would push really hard on here's where we want to be, like let's figure out how to make the legalities around that work, rather than just saying like, no, you can't do that, right? So and I think that's a big difference in terms of like founder thinking versus employee thinking. If you're an employee, like you can't be like, oh, we're going to like, reject what our senior counsel is telling the entire company to do. But the
right.
founders can push back and say, okay, sure, on its face, you can't do this, but how do we kind of work around it or find some corner cases to make it work?
So let me draw a
Um,
really tight frame around intellectual property because I think this is something that many of us will tackle or at least be thinking about. And it's a unique window. So, and I mean, I'm going to ask you from the investor point of view, Michael. I know that's still forming and you're figuring out exactly what that looks like, but we have 40 plus people that at least could play a technologist on TV, if not a pretty hardcore technologist. Would you
yeah.
say go out and get all the patents you can? Would you say please don't think about it? Would you say it's worth vibe coding? Don't even bother doing it yourself? Like, where's the box you're sort of encouraging people that when you hear an idea, defensibility, market competition aside, like how do you coach people on protecting, not protecting things that feel like are always being challenged in cheaper and cheaper ways?
Yeah, I mean, there's different schools of thought on the IP side of things. I don't tend to put a lot of value onto patents. So like, there are investors who care a lot about that, but that's just not been my area of concern. Just because there's so much more to the business. It gets back to my point I made briefly before, which is people think the product is going to carry the whole business. They're like, oh, like if I make this great product and I patent it, suddenly I'll be a billionaire overnight, right? Which is never happens. So like, and so I think there's just a lot more business process that protects your intellectual property than just the patent. I mean, there's a few really specialized cases, but I think by and large, like if you're talking about like B2B SaaS type startups, which is, the by far the most common ones you see out there, like I don't see patents as being that valuable. So
Perfect. All right, let's
So
rotate around a
yeah,
bit. Thank you,
thank you,
thank you,
Mike.
thank you for the
Look forward
question.
to
yeah.
being in touch.
Make sure you say hello and introduce yourself.
Yep. Hi, Michael. I'm John. I'm a master's ECD student here. I'm actually quite curious about sort of your last startup and maybe the reasons that it didn't work out because you mentioned, it was able to scale to what was it, 200K users. I think
Yeah.
there shouldn't be any problem on the infrastructure side. And you said it was from 2019 to 2024, so like 5 years. I think that's a pretty
Yep.
long time for a startup. So like if you
Yeah.
could maybe go over what are the things that didn't work out, what would you do if you could maybe redo some of the things that you did? Yeah, things like that. Thank
So,
you.
so Michael, you notice how he almost said the word fail and then he was being very polite and said it. But you can say that in front of Michael. He's still okay. He's sitting in a nice house, I'm sure, and hanging out in a nice
Yeah.
place. So I don't think you're going to hurt his feelings. All right, Michael, tell us why you failed, but what you would have done differently.
Well, I think I mean, there's all sorts of different, descriptions for these things. I mean, we came from WhatsApp where I think, WhatsApp made it look easy in some sense. So like my partner was on the business side, I was on the engineering side. And he's like, oh, it's great. We'll just build this other network and it'll be just like WhatsApp because we're using phone numbers as identifiers. But the problem is the market had moved, right? So WhatsApp already existed. A lot of the people we were trying to pitch on using the product thought we were trying to compete directly with WhatsApp, and we weren't. Like they're like, oh, it's like the new WhatsApp. We're like, no, we're not trying to be the new WhatsApp. That would be a very challenging thing to go against. Um, and so I think we started out thinking we knew what we were going to build, and so we spent 2 years building it and getting it to where we wanted it to be. And so we launched in 2021. Um, like to the public. So we like allowed anyone to sign up and use it. The initial response was good, as I mentioned, but we weren't able to get sustained growth. So I think, looking back, lessons learned would have been to validate the market a little more. And so the problem with a lot of these things is the whole vitamins versus painkillers, which hopefully you've heard somewhere along the way in
Actually, it's
entrepreneurship.
worth doing a 30-second just frame. I think some
Okay,
people have heard of it, but I think it's worth just sort of sharing.
sure. So as an aside, so explaining, so I did not come up with this. So this is a concept people talk about, which is, in the market, if you've got a headache, you've got the real problem. You're going to go say, wow, my head hurts. You go to the drugstore and you're going to buy some aspirin or Tylenol and take it to get your headache to go away. Versus, generally, people want to be in good health. You want to take your supplements, you want to take your calcium and your vitamins and everything else to keep you as a healthier person. But people just don't spend as much money on those because it's not something that has an immediate, the value prop isn't immediate, right? So it's like, you're not going to get the value of all those vitamins until like, potentially decades down the road. And so the market for painkillers versus vitamins, the painkillers market is much better than the vitamins market, is what people are getting at when they say that, because you're addressing a real pain point immediately versus something that you're just good for you that, will be good for the world, in 10 years. And so I think that's where we were with HalloApp. Like we were building like a vitamin type of product and not a painkiller product. In that it's like we would talk to people and we'd say, hey, like, wouldn't you want a private social network that doesn't have all this bump filtering and all the other AI stuff? And they'd say yes, but then they're not really that motivated to switch over. Same thing, whereas you tell someone, instead of buying painkillers all the time, you could just take all these great supplements and lead a healthy life. And of course, people don't want to do that in general. So like that. So that was it. So I think the big one was we should have tried the product. We should have got the product out earlier, gotten more hard feedback versus just people saying, yeah, that's a good idea. Like you should build that. And then, I think by around the end of 2023, we were pretty sure we weren't going to make it. So we started pivoting to different ideas. But we didn't have enough money and the company had been around for 4 years. So we decided to shut it down about a year later.
Michael, real quick, before we let you off the hook here on the failure, you obviously had an engineering background, but you were like 50% in the company, metaphorically speaking. Like, what were like 2 or 3 of the biggest or harshest kind of cultural clashes going from what I would say is like the very intense and pressure cooked but structured kind of engineering world-ish to like the more fluid business side? I mean, did you have to cross over? Were there areas where you like realized something was a lot harder than you thought, or that maybe you found you had a superpower in a new way? Anything come to mind?
Well, I don't think I discovered any superpowers along the way. It was a fairly natural transition because I was at WhatsApp. We got acquired by Facebook, and then while we were at Facebook, I moved into management. So I did all of Facebook's management training, from first line manager. So I started out as the manager of the Windows Phone team, and then about 2 years after that, I got moved into a director role. So I was director of all the mobile teams at WhatsApp. So it wasn't like that big of a leap from being director at Facebook to like being a CTO at a startup. It's just, the scale is a little smaller, right? You don't have all the massive amounts of data and infrastructure. But just working with multiple people and like, doing all the management was a fairly natural transition. So
Fair enough. All right, let's rotate around. Now, before we let Paul come back here, who else has a question? Do you have a question? Get up here. Oren will slide out of the way. Please introduce yourself. The camera is more or less in front.
Okay. Hi, Michael. Thanks so
hello.
much for your time. I actually graduated around the same time as you from computer science and math, and I'm back here my second time in AI systems management at Heinz with Professor Lee. So my first question is not earth-shattering, but I'm just really curious about your path to what's up. Is it, like, was it an introduction? Because you did PayPal in the startup. PayPal was very good at the time too. And from startup, because with hindsight, it's always good to, it's always easy to look back and say, hey, this was a life-changing experience. But it's always like, how did you get to that? And was it like being physically in California, you met a VC, you met a, like a colleague who then went to WhatsApp. So how did you go about getting that opportunity?
Yeah. I was at PayPal. I didn't really enjoy that one. I'd always been interested in school in compilers, so I took a bunch of compilers courses. And so that's how I ended up at this other startup, Coverity, because they're using compiler techniques to find defects in software. Um, After about 3 years, I don't know, I was like, it's a good company, but maybe I should start looking around. So I interviewed at a bunch of startups it was like 2007. Um, got a couple offers, didn't quite think they were a big enough change from where I was, so I didn't take either of those offers. But it was important because 2 years later, I was quitting. I found a job in finance, and I ended up not liking that either. Every time I've worked in finance, I haven't liked it. Um, so after a couple of years in working in finance, I quit, and I was thinking about starting my own company. And I got this email from Jan Koum out of the blue. He's like, "Hey, I've got this startup, and my friend says you interviewed him there and did well with his company's interview process. So I'd love to talk to you about potentially working
That's
with me at
interesting.
WhatsApp." Um, but I was even then I was like, yeah, I guess I wasn't like I was like, oh, it's a chat app. Like I'm not going to join this company, right? So, but I was like, yeah, I'll come down and talk to you. And that was when I got the metrics in person. And it was funny. It was probably one of the last times they shared any of the metrics with interview candidates. So we'd interview people like 6 months later, and Jan's like, no, you can't tell them anything. And I'm like, well, like that's a pretty nice part of the way we could recruit people. But okay. So,
1% of growth matters.
yeah.
No, it's super interesting. So it's like a startup interview process, and you get a email from the founder. That's pretty amazing. The second question is
I,
about sorry.
Yeah, just to further, so it goes back to the Yahoo network. So like the reason they knew each other was because they all worked at Yahoo. So this was sort of going through the Yahoo alumni network, right? So you've heard about some of these stories. I mean, PayPal is the one that gets the most press, like the PayPal mafia, like
Yes.
all these people at PayPal have like split out and gone and built all these companies. But there's a bunch of people who've done similar things with Yahoo, like Google had a smaller effect, but like that. But you'll just see these networks of people that aren't like well known, but it's like that was, so basically, even though I never worked at Yahoo, the Yahoo network was sort of what connected me into WhatsApp. So
Okay. Okay. No, thank you very much. So the second question, Michael, is about the font that you're creating, targeting
mhm.
CMU alumni, and I think it's wonderful because over the years, when I was working, I just never hear about like CMU entrepreneurs, never in the
Mhm.
market, and
Yeah,
but I also like studied at Stanford. I always hear about Stanford entrepreneurs, like they grow in trees, and
yeah.
and and I always wondered, why don't we hear about CMU entrepreneurs? So is it the fact that is it a matter of a marketing, branding, like CMU entrepreneurs are very modest, so it's very hard to uncover them, or they just work in big companies, big tech, or they don't inspired to do a startup. They just work in
Yeah.
management teams or
I,
whatever.
I don't know that I have one right answer to this. I certainly would like to, I'm also would like to know the root causes. I graduated in 2001, as I said. Up until very recently, I didn't know anyone from my year who started anything, right? So everyone I know went to various tech companies, right? So like, and nobody was forming any startups. I mean, I did one later, but that was only once it was like a very low risk concern for me personally, right? So I think that's part of it is risk aversion, right? I think there's a lot of risk aversion among the culture at CMU. I think it's like, okay, we're going to do well academically and then make sure you get the job at Microsoft or Google and sort of like, that's the safe, you're going to do well in life, but you're not going to be like a superstar in terms of founding a company. And so, I mean, I think that's a lot of the culture at CMU was like that, especially, I mean, I don't know, I'm not there today, so I don't know if it's changed. I do hear a lot more about students starting things and thinking about dropping out. So I think there's much more of a push towards entrepreneurship than there was in the late 90s. Um, what was I getting at? So that, and then, um, yeah. Oh, the other one is I, I recall there's a huge focus on the job fair in the fall. Like they put up signs everywhere and like kind of put banners over the walkways and say the technical opportunities conference is, in September, like, get your resume ready and like, and so it was just all about pitching yourself as an employee and not really thinking about it as starting something from scratch. Those are sort of cultural issues. I mean, there's also just the geography, right? So like Stanford is next to Sand Hill Road, which is famously where all the massive venture capital firms had their offices traditionally. Since the mobile cycle, a lot of them have moved up to San Francisco, so it's no longer so focused on Sand Hill Road. But up until 2010, like that was the place you would go to get ventures. Like at Sand Hill, there was like this 1 mile stretch of Sand Hill Road where like when you drive it, you'll be like, wow, like all of them are in the same spots. You'll see Andreessen, you'll see Sequoia, you'll see Kleiner, you'll see like they're all just right next to each other on this one strip. And it is immediately adjacent to Stanford. Like I can't tell you, it's like if you're going to Craig Street and all the VCs were right there. Like that's what it's like at Stanford. It's just like this road that runs right next to their campus is where all of the venture capital firms are. So I think there's just that incredibly unfair geography of the campus. So like that.
Just a follow up to wrap it up. How would you, go about uncovering these CMU entrepreneurs? Like, what would make it?
Yeah, so we started to talk to a few. We're not, we haven't formed the fund yet, so we're still working through that, that process. So we have started talking to a few. I pay attention to all the Venture Bridge companies. I'm sure you've heard of Venture Bridge. But we've also been finding founders elsewhere. So there's actually a lot more founders out there. And so I think one of the advantages of having this fund is going to be to build the network so that they can have visibility with each other, right? So it's like, when I moved out to California, I didn't really know that many CMU people. I didn't really feel like my CMU alumni network was really what allowed me to make progress versus just like meeting people. Like I went to PayPal, and so I met a bunch of PayPal people, and then I met some people at other networks, right? Whereas I don't think the CMU alumni network is really cooperating in that same way.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Thank you so much.
Michael, we have a terrible joke here that we're counting on you to undo, which is they say that you can build anything at CMU but a company. And I feel that just like hits different, you know what I mean, today? So we're gonna work on that collectively together. Before I let Paul back clean up, what about all my people that are trying to sneak in the multitasking in the back, like staring at your phones, hanging out with your laptops? What question do you have? You can come up and do it. It gives you at least 10 steps on the way here. Come on, come on. Yeah, this is like not a joke. Yeah, come. Yeah. So you have at least 20 seconds to think of a really good question for Michael. And then, Michael, we will let you out of here after the next couple of questions. Do you have a hard stop at 45 after, or do you have to the hour?
Go to the top of the hour.
Perfect. All right. So introduce yourself. Maybe a question to the stars.
Hi, hello. My name is Flora, and I'm a second year PPM student. So like,
I know what PPM is, just so he knows.
it's like the Master of the Public Policy and Management, and it was like belong to the Heinz College. And my question is about like, cause like I'm using like through the WhatsApp, and we also have like the WeChat is also like the chat app. It's from China, but it has like maybe like more functional, like it maybe have like the way like to pay or like to let me think. Oh, and it also like the WeChat is like the combination of the Instagram and also like the WhatsApp. So like, do you have any ideas about like maybe the WhatsApp's future plan?
Ooh, I like that.
I haven't been there since 2019, so I don't know what they're planning internally. But yeah, we did, I'm familiar with WeChat. I think it's Weixin, or is how they say it, or but I'm not doing that right. Yeah, they were really like, the Chinese market is very different. So like they're big into these all-encompassing apps. So like these essentially, in some ways, WeChat has disintermediated like the Apple and Google relationship with their customers, right? Because you can just install WeChat and then you can get mini apps and like you can do all sorts of other stuff just within it, to the point where a lot of Chinese customers don't care whether they're on an iPhone or Android as long as they've got WeChat, right? So it's like step one, get WeChat, and then just ignore the rest of the phone. So like that. But it's a different approach. When I was at WhatsApp, Jan, people would say, "Oh, can we add all these features and make WhatsApp more compelling for users?" And Jan's like, "No, we're not here to, we're not building a gaming platform. We're not building like an app platform, right? I want my competitors to be afraid of how laser focused we are in communication, right? So it's just, we get the message through. It's going to be really fast. It's going to be really reliable." And so that was really the guidance the whole time Jan was there. Now it's part of Meta, so Meta has a whole different set of things they're trying to do. One of the first things we had to do when we joined Meta was add. So Meta cares about these metrics called time spent. So they want to they watch every second. They say how many seconds were you in the app today, right? So like they have all those metrics on the Instagram and Facebook and all that, and they want to see the number going up and to the right, right? It's like okay, the more time people spend in the app, the more engagement we have, the more ads we can sell, and so on. WhatsApp never tracked that because we weren't trying to sell ads and we weren't trying to sell attention, right? So it's just like we don't need to track how long you're in the app. If you come in, send a message, and leave, like that's great. Like you got your utility out of the app. So yeah, the tension there was just, they said, hey, you need to put time spent in. And it's challenging for two reasons. One, you have to instrument the app and figure out where people are spending time. And two, it ends up using quite a bit of data compared to, because WhatsApp is incredibly data efficient. And so like it ends up burning a lot of data that we felt was not something we could take from our users because they're paying for their own mobile plans. And so we're essentially using their data to collect our metrics, right? So in terms of other features, I know Zuckerberg is pushing for things like, I mean, he's using it as a surface for AI deployment. So like you can, when you search for something on WhatsApp, it now does like AI things, which I don't know, made me kind of sad when I first saw that. So like, um, but yeah, I mean, now that it's got this huge surface area of 3 billion users, like they're going to use it to like launch other features and use it as a way of getting attention on things that they care about. So.
Oh, it's pretty good to know, and thank you so much.
Excellent recovery. Way to go. Okay, Paul, I'm gonna put you out of your misery. Let's get up here. Get one question, no semicolon.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, yeah, pretty much a pretty straightforward standard question. What are your personal pillars and intangibles of a good tech team, from designer to PM to engineer? What attributes help your team streamline operations, especially engineering?
Semicolons have to be.
Oh, wait, no. But just like specifically for a mobile app,
question.
because they have their own nuances, versus a B2B.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend exactly on the market. I mean, mobile apps are kind of no longer the bleeding edge of technology. Again, they were because the iPhone came out 2007, and then suddenly everyone had an interest in building mobile apps that have the characteristics are a little different for mobile apps versus desktop apps, right? Like you have a GPS, for example, and you have cellular and all those other things. So I think these days it's not really a big differentiator to just say, okay, we've got a tremendous mobile strategy compared to what it would have been in like 2010 or 2009. But what do I look for? I mean, I'm still a big believer in in-person collaboration, so I think people really should be in the same office. I know it's a hotly debated topic. We went through the pandemic and everyone kind of saw how it works you can go remote. But I just think, especially for startups, when you're just, trying to rapidly figure out how to get your product to fit properly into the market, like having people in the same room to talk about it, brainstorm, and just kind of make sure we're all rowing in the same direction, right? So that big believer in that. In terms of like, you asked about some of the different roles. Now that mobile's been around for a while, you're going to find a lot of people with deep experience in these areas, right? So like, again, the reason I got the job at WhatsApp in 2009 is because there wasn't anyone with deep BlackBerry experience. I mean, there were a few people, but there weren't that many people. And so like, John's like, hey, come here and work on this thing. These days, no one's hiring BlackBerry engineers, but if you're looking for an iPhone or an Android engineer, like you can find somebody who's got 5 to 10 years experience. And so like, you can actually get that kind of talent. And so I would, want, especially on the founding team, like, either that they're themselves like really good at that, or they're able to attract that type of talent to join the team. Like, okay, like I found this guy who, worked at Google on Google Maps for 5 years on the Android side. And so now this person is building our Android app, right? So.
For sure. Thank you.
All right, we are rounding towards the time and the hours. Do you have a quick question?
Yes.
Okay, you gotta come up though. You have to be equal in front of the camera. We'll like slow clap for you. So, Michael, I'll prime you that after this one is going to be our last question. And so I'll let you noodle on sort of what you want the message to be to everybody. And if you have any kind of asks, I know you're starting to float occasionally through Pittsburgh. So I'll just prime you that you get a solid couple minutes here, and then we're going to look for your big firework ending. Please.
Hi, my name is Crystal Bayat, and I'm from MSPPM. I think she described what MSPPM stands for, but yeah, I'm very interested into the business world, but I've heard your story and your journey. So just I want to ask you a piece of advice. Like, even though when you start your business, there was already established businesses and platforms, like we have Telegram in Middle East and WeChat in Asia, but you still like, what kept you motivated to stay in your idea, even though like America is not like a huge user for WhatsApp? And for me, like right now I have like this idea to work on it, but then I see like a lot of big competitors, and sometimes it pushed me behind to not like work or put hours or efforts into it. So yeah, I would really appreciate if you share any piece of advice at this time.
I'm trying to restate the question. I didn't fully understand. So you want to know why, like, how did I stay motivated to work on WhatsApp when there were competitors like Telegram?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe the area, why not chase the newest, shiniest object?
Yeah, I mean, Telegram didn't start until 2013. So that was, I was at WhatsApp from 2010 to 20, 2019, right? So we had 3 years ahead of Telegram. And so, I mean, like I said earlier, we didn't really care to look at the competitors all that much. So, I mean, people had mentioned Telegram, but we just didn't view them as a serious competitor. They claim things that are not true as well, which I mean, it's worked. Like their marketing has worked. Like they claim to be this secure encrypted platform when in fact they're not. Like the only time you actually get this encryption that's comparable to WhatsApp is when you turn on secret chats. And if you do that, you lose a bunch of other functionality in Telegram. So like they're just pretty much lying when they claim that their product is encrypted. Um, so I mean that's but it still works. I mean they've got 1 billion users, right? They figured out how to sell it to people. So like that. But I've often heard people say like, "Oh, Telegram is secure," because that's part of their marketing, and it's not. Like WhatsApp is more secure than Telegram. So
Okay, thank you.
All right,
Yeah.
Chenyan, my colleague, is gonna round us out here.
Hi,
Yep.
Michael. So I'm Chen Yan. I'm a faculty at SCS. I'm a co-instructor with Adam. I'm baby of this class. So I
Yeah.
want to ask you a question about what do you feel is the difference as an investor and as a founder? Because maybe some of in this classroom we're also facing similar choices. Do they want to be a founder, but when they made it, do they want to keep funding another company or be an investor? And also I want you, when you are doing the roundup, to maybe share a little bit more about the new fund you are forming and maybe what is the investment thesis besides focusing on CMU.
Yeah. Difference between being an investor and a founder. I mean, investors don't have as much control over the company as you might think, right? So like once you've invested, you don't have a lot of leverage to change things at the company, right? That's the domain of the operator, which is the founder and like the managers of the company. So the difference is just incredible focus on one thing. So if you're founding a company, you're going to focus on this one company for, like in my case, I spent 5 years on a startup before we decided to shut it down. So you're going to be looking at a 5 to 10 year focus on just this one company. And so you better, like your co-founder, you better, be in a place where you can actually do that for a long period of time. On the investing side, it's a little more shallow. Like you're not doing the incredibly deep dive into each vertical of the companies, but you still have to know a little bit about all of them and be able to like sort of talk credibly with the founders about the market they're in and how they're going to sell their product. But it's a much more high level decision-making process. And again, you're not getting in there and operating the company yourself, right? So like that's the founder's job.
All right, Michael. So the other part of Chenyan's question was about maybe sharpening kind of the lens about, so the fund is for CMU, but maybe you could give us like the official commercial about who we should be sending to you, who should we be telling you about, at least to the extent and I'm sure it's a moving target to a certain degree.
Yeah. So what we're looking for is, I mean, just get back, what's the point? So we want to generate more entrepreneurship out of CMU. So I really want to catch companies that are like on the bubble about whether they should form or not, right? Talk to them about what their ideas are and figure out how to connect them to the right people to actually go through the process of forming the company. In terms of our investment criteria, the sole criteria is that we have to have a CMU affiliated founder, defined fairly broadly, alumni, faculty, even people who've dropped out. If they spent a couple of years on campus, we would consider. And that person has to have at least 20% equity in the company at the time we invest, right? Because we want them to have a substantial stake, not just like, oh, I'm the first design employee and they gave me 0.5%. Like that would not qualify. So we want the founding level people to have the CMU affiliation. After that, it's more of we want things that have venture return. So at this early stage investing, an investor is looking for the potential for like 100x return. That's just because there's a high probability of failure, right? So you need the successes to actually cover up all of those failures. And so if you come to this company and you're like, oh, we're going to, grow by, we think it'll be a 5x return. It's like, okay, I mean, that's a great return, but that's not really going to move the needle on a fund because, I've got to cover the other 80 companies that failed along the way. So you're really trying to estimate that. It's like, okay, what is and it's, nobody's guaranteeing anything. It's not like I'm guaranteeing all these companies are going to succeed, but it's like, is there a chance for this company to achieve 100x growth? So that means most, software companies, generally deep tech things are going to be relevant. We're excluding stuff like, opening a brewery or like opening a nail salon or something. That's still a business. That's entrepreneurship. But, you're not going to see the path to the large growth that technology enables.
And what about check size? I know you mentioned sort of kind of catching people on the bubble. I mean, I'm sure you're still figuring some stuff out, but do you want to be the, first 100K? Do you want to be the first $1 million? Where's your kind of aim?
Yeah, so my partner is Jonathan. He's in New York. So we are both investors in a fund called Hustle Fund. And so they do really early stage investing, so similar to where we're looking to invest. And so we've basically taken their playbook. So like they've been doing it since I think 17 or so, and so they've had a decent result from theirs. And so what they do is they do a really fast initial check. So like they'll do like these days it's 150,000. And then if if the company has hustle, then they'll write a bigger check after. So they'll do 150 initially and then 200,000 a few weeks down the road. So we're looking at a similar model. So we're going to do 100,000 on a hopefully a fast basis. And then we'll see how the company is able to get some early traction, so show that they've got the right things to make the company work, and then we'll look at an additional 400,000 later. But this isn't something we can really execute on until the fund is formed, and so it hasn't been formed yet. So like people are like, oh, Michael, I want to pitch you on the 100K like right now. Like we're not quite there. So like the. Yeah.
So I know we pulled you real close to the hour, and I'm sure there's a few questions that are still brewing. So maybe you could leave us with sort of, any asks on your end, like if you're looking for interns, if you're looking for help, if you want sort of connection to CMU, if you're sort of bringing together scouts, anything you'd like to share with the group in terms of how we could be supportive of your vision as well.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely want to hear about anyone who's starting a company and chat with them. So like that's number one. So if you hear about somebody thinking about starting something, we'd love to chat. But it's not, just to reiterate, I said this before, it's like, it's not just show me the diploma and then I'll give you a check, right? So it needs to be a good idea and like have a bunch of other things around it. So, it's the reality of we're targeting 40 million for the total size of the fund. The reality is there's not a lot of capacity to pay people for things. So like, we would not be able to do paid internships and things like that. Like there's just, the budget isn't there after we pay for all the other overhead we have to take care of. So as the fund gets bigger, if we do a fund 2 or fund 3, I think that would open it up, but that's a few years down the road. So in the short term, we're just looking for essentially volunteers who are willing to sort of send us stuff until we can get this thing up and scaled better. And then my immediate goal.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
no
please.
WhatsApp group. I mean, we're mostly dealing with people over email. Yeah, I mean, our very, very short-term goal is we got to do the fundraise, right? So we got to get the fundraise for the fund. Not out of the way isn't the right word, but just sort of in a place where I think everyone's comfortable that we're going to hit the goals. So
wonderful. And then how would you prefer people get in touch to maybe give you those hard-earned volunteer hours if they wanted to follow up?
You can reach out to me on email. So my email is mdonohue@plaidmatrix.fund, which
I can share that with everybody.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So
that'd be the best way. So,
yeah, we need to give Michael a big round of applause because we're going to make him late for his next meeting. Or like one hand. Sorry, I'm still like a cripple here. Michael, hey, thanks a lot for dropping in. Hopefully we'll see you when your next visit is, and maybe you can come see us in person on your next trip.
Sounds good. Okay. Thanks, Adam.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Talk to you soon.
Yeah. Bye.
All right. See ya.